Alright, this is going to be a very long video. You know me, normally I would love to sit here and ramble for about 4 to 7 minutes before I get into the video proper, but I'm sure you've seen the title, you've seen the thumbnail. We're here today to talk about Star Darlings, a very short-lived project from Disney from the mid-2010s that has just kind of sat in the back of my head for a very long while now. This is a video I've been working on for a while, more than a year at this point, and not even really actively working on it, just starting to work on it, then getting intimidated by the sheer scale of it, then just tabling it for a while, but I'm done. I'm finished tabling. We're going to do this today. What is Star Darlings? Oh my god, I'm so glad you asked. Just sit there and don't move for a few hours because I have so much to talk about. Chapter 1. What is Star Darlings? Star Darlings is a 2015 multimedia franchise that was produced and backed by Disney, created by the husband-wife duo of Ahmet Zappa and Shauna Muldoon Zappa. Ahmet is the son of the musician Frank Zappa, which, yes, I know calling him a musician is like a massive understatement, but this video ain't about him. The point is that Ahmet has had a very long and productive career in music production himself. That seems to be his primary focus, but also has an established working relationship with Disney, producing and selling films for them. The biggest of which is probably The Odd Life of Timothy Green in 2012. I searched and searched for, maybe a full interview or an article that quotes one of them on their inspiration or what it was like to create this franchise. There's not a whole lot of those, unfortunately, but I did find a quote from Ahmet in a press release from when Star Darlings first launched in fall of 2015. Our intention with Star Darlings has always been to empower every girl, no matter where she was born or what she looks like, to understand that she has what it takes within to make her own wishes come true, through the unstoppable energy created by positive thinking, taking action, and believing in yourself. And also this quote from Andrew Sugarman, who was the executive vice president of Disney Publishing at the time. Star Darlings represents a fully realized world where strong, confident girls are front and center. We're excited to announce this all-new, innovative property tailor-made for today's tween, and the launch of Star Darlings represents one of our broadest multi-platform launches to date. I did find at least one interview with Ahmet through the website GeekDad. For all purposes, he seems like a pretty cool guy. The series as a whole is dedicated to his own daughter, Halo, and he says this about it. Well, first off, I have a daughter, and there isn't a thing in the world that I wouldn't do for her. I want her to grow up knowing that anything is possible, that she can do whatever she sets her mind to, and can achieve things in life by taking action, never compromising herself, respecting differences, and treating people with dignity, kindness, and compassion. That being different is rad, and that she should try to have as much fun in life as possible, and, most importantly, never lose her sense of humor. Then, also, towards the end, there's a part where he says he's all for abolishing gender labels and hopes Star Darlings appeals to boys, too. Right on. So, a franchise aimed at tween girls, and also, in their words, a very ambitious launch at that. No doubt inspired by the likes of Monster High by Mattel, which had launched a few years earlier, and, well, they didn't create this model, but they definitely popularized it, of fashion dolls having all this media surrounding them. Webisodes, animated specials, books, music. In the case of Star Darlings, the main focus was on a series of middle grade chapter books. 14 were released in total, and I have them all here with me. But there was also a webisode series, a couple of televised specials, and of course, dolls, which I also have here with me. Whereas Monster High went on to become a worldwide phenomenon, Star Darlings barely lasted more than a year, and is largely forgotten outside of people like me that spend entirely too much time thinking about toys. So despite using the model that something like Monster High set up for them, Star Darlings couldn't even come close to replicating its success. And we'll talk about why. We'll also, of course, discuss the characters and the plot and the dolls. No stone unturned, so let's get into it. Chapter 2. The characters. So who are these titular Star Darlings? I couldn't decide if it was better to discuss the characters or the world building first, but for me personally, characters are the most important part of something like this. That's where I always go first. I like to zero in immediately and find out which ones are going to be my favorite. Everything else comes after. When Star Darlings first launched, it did so with a website that featured pretty robust character profiles for all of the main cast. It even included pictures of their dorm rooms, which I always thought was a really cool character building detail. The website has unfortunately since been taken down, but it's still accessible thanks to the Wayback Machine. And I'll include screenshots of their profiles here as I do quickly go through them all, so feel free to pause and read more about them if you want. But for some basic information, Star Darlings takes place in a world called Starland, which is essentially like a planet somewhere out above Earth. It's a very futuristic utopia sort of society that uses elements of both science fiction and fantasy. If you remember how Winx Club was in the early season when it liked to blend futuristic technology with fairy magic, it's actually a lot like that. Inhabitants of Starland are called Starlings, and our story takes place at a prestigious boarding school called Starling Academy, which is kind of like a school here on Earth being named Human Academy, but I digress. All of our main characters are students there, studying to become wish granters. Everyone there glows and sparkles and has a very signature monochromatic color scheme. Each of the 12 main characters corresponds to a sign of the zodiac. The astrology theming is unfortunately pretty subtle. Like, it's not ever mentioned or brought up in the actual series, but each girl is absolutely modeled after the personality traits of their specific sign. The leader, and more or less the de facto protagonist of the series, is Sage, for Sagittarius. She's a first year at the school and is the archetypal, bright-eyed, charismatic, but slightly awkward new girl. Libby, for Libra, also a first year, is a generous, upbeat, and very sweet-natured girl. A very much the resident girly girl. She's one of my personal favorites. Leona, for Leo, she's confident, dramatic, and very musically gifted. Unlike most of the other girls, she doesn't actually want to be a wish granter. Rather, she aspires to be a pop star. Vega, for Virgo, that's me, is a second year. She's the most academically gifted of the group, so she's very logical, a perfectionist, and she's very good with technology. She is my favorite. I'm entirely predictable. I have to rep for my Virgo sister. Scarlet, for Scorpio, she's a third year. She's known to be kind of an outcast. She's a loner, mostly due to her obsession with wanting to live on Earth, but she's also very creative and very passionate. These 5, Sage, Libby, Leona, Vega, and Scarlet, are the primary cast. All 12 girls are considered main characters, but these 5 are the main characters. So most of the marketing focuses on them. They're the most prominent in the animated series too, with all the other girls being relegated more or less almost to background roles. Oh, and they're also all in a band, which is also called Star Darlings. So you'll see a lot of promotional images with these 5 holding instruments or playing music. And they also, in universe, are the band that sings the Star Darlings main theme, Wish Now, as well as all the other songs featured in the series. So they also have prominence in the music videos. The remaining characters are Cassie, for Cancer. She's the only exception to what I just talked about. She's really the only one in the secondary group to get a decent amount of screen time, also to be featured in promotional illustrations from time to time. She's very sweet, very shy, and she loves to read books. Piper, for Pisces' second year, she's very spiritual and poetic. Dreamy is probably a good word to describe her. Astra, for Aries, second year, she's the resident jock. She's confident, she's brash, and she loves sports. Tessa, for Taurus, third year. I would probably describe her as the mom friend. Her primary hobby is baking, and she's always looking out for everyone, especially Gemma, who is her little sister. Adora, for Aquarius, third year. She's the one that's most interested in science, but she also loves fashion, and she's always looking for ways to combine the two. She's another character I really like, but like most of the others in this group, she really suffers from just a lack of focus. Clover, for Capricorn, third year. She's also very into music, but she prefers to take more of a backstage role. Gemma, for Gemini, first year. She's extroverted, easily excitable, and very talkative. Also, as I said, Tessa's little sister. Outside of these 12, there's also just a few other characters that are important to know. Lady Stella, she's the headmistress of Starling Academy and portrayed as this very wise and regal mentor figure. I actually think she kind of sucks, which I guess isn't entirely her fault. It's a byproduct of plots that focus heavily on child characters. The adult characters, the authority figures, they all just seem very incompetent in comparison. Lady Cordial, head of admissions and Lady Stella's second in command. She's portrayed as generally well-meaning, but pretty clumsy, inept, and also very bad at her job to kind of a concerning degree. And finally, Vivica, another first-year student. She's the very archetypal mean girl bully type character. Except whereas those characters usually have some degree of popularity, it's generally seen that almost no one at the school actually likes Vivica. I think the characters are probably one of the strongest things about Star Darlings, because it's a large cast, yeah, but every character feels very, very distinct from one another. I think they do such a good job of communicating at just a glance every girl's personality, her style, who she is, and also do so in a way that makes them very visually interesting too. Which I understand when you say that out loud, it doesn't necessarily sound impressive. Like, yeah, you have characters who are all different people and look like different people. Groundbreaking. But I think especially for a franchise that is aimed at young girls, this is something that tends to be kind of a struggle. You know, usually there's a cast of girls and they all sort of have the same silhouette, same vaguely modern girly fashion style, especially when it comes to a series that incorporates dolls, right? But I think Star Darlings does such a good job of giving every character a very distinct persona, and also manages to incorporate this very celestial sort of theme into it too. They do have this very vague alien-esque aesthetic to them, which I think is really cool. I think they did a good job with the diversity too. They are from outer space, so there's some degree of like racial ambiguity to it. No one gets assigned a specific race or culture, but there's such a good range of skin tones and different facial structures among the characters. You can tell the designers cared a lot about representing a very wide range of girls, and I think it paid off too. And the cast in general is just very charming. They're based on archetypes, obviously, but no one feels too much like a stereotype. No one has just one personality trait that gets run into the ground. Like, yeah, Vega is the smart one, but she's also driven. She's a hard worker, and her perfectionism sometimes makes her fussy and narrow-minded. Libby is obviously this girly girl of the group, but she's also patient and diplomatic, and she tries to make everyone happy. So I think that's where Star Darlings really shines, giving you this large cast of colorful, well-defined characters that you can absolutely relate to. Chapter 3, the world building. So the world of Star Darlings, or Starland, it has a mutually beneficial relationship with Earth, or as they call it, Wish World. Once I get to the book summaries, I might end up using both Earth and Wish World interchangeably, which I apologize if that gets confusing, but know that they mean the same thing. Earth is Wish World is Earth. Starlings call Earth Wish World because their entire society is powered by wishes from humans, or wishlings. Again, I might say both wishling and human, they're the same thing. Wishlings are humans. So what happens is that humans make a wish, which manifests into a wish orb and gets sent to Starland. The wish is studied and identified, and a professional wish granter is sent down to Earth, disguised as a human to help make it come true. The positive energy from the granted wish is then collected and converted to power on Starland. Wishes are broken down into 3 different classifications. Good wishes. Wishes that amount to something positive, like doing well in school or wishing for a new job. These are the primary source of energy for Starland. Impossible wishes. These are wishes that are beyond the ability for starlings to grant, like world peace. They're kept under observation in the hopes that they'll eventually turn into a more manageable good wish. Bad wishes. Wishes that amount to something negative, like wishing for someone else to fail or wishing for them to get hurt. Bad wish orbs are considered to be somewhat toxic to starlings and are never granted under any circumstances. Instead, the orbs are collected and stored in a special containment facility. So, starlings grant our wishes, and we give them power. However, it's necessary for this connection to remain a secret, because if humans knew that there was an alien race out there granting our wishes, they would overwhelm them with lots of very intentional and likely very selfish wishes. Also, all starlings are born with the ability to manipulate wish energy. Some are more powerful than others, but it manifests essentially as a telekinesis. One of my favorite things about Stardarlings is that you can really tell that the authors put a lot of thought and a lot of care into crafting this world. It's so imaginative in a way that I think really connects with kids too, without being too complicated or being too simple, which really isn't that easy to do. But this is a series that definitely respected its audience, at least in the books, but we'll get to that. Aside from the wish granting system and the whole futuristic utopia thing, Starling society is not too different from human society. All the characters come from different social backgrounds. Some have big families, some have small families, some come from wealth, some from more modest means. Some live in the city, some live in the country or on a farm. But they do differ from human society in a lot of key ways. In fact, it's stated a few times in the series that starlings find humans to be very primitive. A few of the characters even notably look down on humans, while others view them sort of like pets or babies. Basically, beings that are incapable of taking care of themselves or solving their own problems. I'm not actually sure if the authors intended for it to come off like so negative, but that's the vibe I got. And don't get me wrong, I actually found it kind of fun. Anyways, while I was reading the books, I kept this running list of things that the characters would encounter while on Earth, and it would point out in the narration that this thing doesn't exist on Starland. And after 14 books, the full list is crime, war, or any kind of oppression, trash, dirt, or any sort of mess. All garbage magically disappears if it's dropped on the floor, and clothes don't stain. But because of this, they also lack any kind of cleaning utensils, sickness, or disease. Fish, just in general. Also meat. All living things, including the animals, are vegetarian. There is a slightly disturbing moment in Libby's book where she sees fish for the first time at an aquarium, and then she watches a sea lion eat fish, which she just learned were living beings. Refrigerators. Surnames. Fire. Service workers. All menial tasks are taken care of by bots, which are just like autonomous robots. One of them is kind of like a series mascot, Moj4, and body image issues. So I think that should give a good overview of the kind of society that the characters live in. Chapter 4, the plot summary. This will undoubtedly be the longest section, and I really struggled with whether or not I should include it, but I asked my audience, you guys, if I should include the plot summaries and just let this video be however long it needs to be, or if I should keep it short and concise, and pretty overwhelmingly, you guys voted for length. But I also have some personal reasons for wanting to be more in-depth with this section. One, I completely understand how frustrating it is to watch one of these videos, a deep dive, a retrospective, and not feel like you're getting the full story, especially if the story is not very accessible. As far as I know, there is no easily accessible full plot summary for Star Darlings. There are for some of the books, but not for all of them. And Disney is kind of trying to pretend that this series never existed. They removed the website. They took down the YouTube channel just a few months ago, which had all of the webisodes and music videos on it. I'm pretty passionate about archival, and I know that a YouTube video retrospective is not the best definition of archiving a full series, but I do think it goes a long way in the sense of, like, putting it all in one place. To that end, I think a full, easily accessible plot summary is a great thing to have. If you can't read the books, if you can't watch the webisodes, at least you can get the story in this way. To that end, two big shout outs. One to the Star Darlings wiki for saving and archiving all the illustrations, website graphics, and promotional images, and also to the YouTube channel, Star Darlings Archive, for saving and re-uploading the webisodes. Also, I should mention that I really struggled with how to format this section. That's actually one of the reasons it took me so long to just sit down and commit to this video. One thing about Star Darlings is that its three core tenets, the books, the webisodes, and the dolls, are all extremely unbalanced. I'll talk about this more a little later, but I think that was more or less the fatal flaw to this series and why it didn't really take off. The books, the dolls, and the webisodes are all in such disharmony with one another. And to make it worse, the most easily accessible form of media for Star Darlings, the webisodes, are easily the worst part. The books, I really enjoyed the books. I thought they were cute, they were charming, they were fun. Conversely, the webisodes, I really wouldn't hesitate to call them really bad and honestly kind of uncomfortable to watch. In fact, I remember watching them in 2015, 2016 and being like just really put off to the point that I didn't revisit this series for a long time. The webisodes also very much do not adapt the books, but rather than talk about the books in a big chunk and then talk about the webisodes in a big chunk, I've decided to do both simultaneously. So even though the webisodes do not really follow the books, it's sort of implied that they happen as the books are going on. So I did my best to construct a sort of full timeline of both book and webisode, which is not accurate at all, but I just thought it was the best way to do this. Also, I felt it was a good way to illustrate how jarring the webisodes are compared to the books, so let's do this. Let's discuss the entire Star Darlings plot. There will be timestamps and chapters and such if you're not really interested in the plot, so feel free to skip or come back later. The books were published from September 2015 to January of 2017, while the webisodes ran from October 2015 to November 2017. So, yeah, almost pretty much simultaneously. In addition to the storybooks, there's also one supplementary book, A Wisher's Guide to Starland. This is essentially like an art book that has illustrations and profiles of all the characters, as well as some school staff members, and even some artwork of plants and animals on Starland. But we'll start with the very first chapter book, released in September of 2015. Sage and the Journey to Wish World. The first book is, of course, Sage's. A lot of this one is world building and establishing the setting that we just discussed, as well as very brief and very rough introductions to some of the main cast. Since this is the first book that, introduces the entire world, the summary of this one is probably going to be the longest one and will require a lot of explaining things with no visuals. Because again, it is a book. Bear with me. Sorry. For Sage, we learn that she comes from a close, tight-knit family and that her mother is a very prominent and accomplished researcher. She's a new first-year student at Starling Academy and shares her room with another first-year, Cassie, whose book will come a little later. After the opening ceremony, Sage and 11 other girls are called to the office of the school's headmaster, Lady Stella. She says they were called to act as an experimental test group of wish granters, because she believes that the wishes of children will be more potent and powerful if granted by young starlings rather than adult ones. To accomplish this, she plans to send the entire group to Wish World, Earth, to blend in with the humans. She very intentionally does not explain why she chose these 12 girls specifically, though. The headmistress does explain that this must remain a secret, however, due to being controversial. She tells them that their cover will be that they are reporting to a monitored study group, to which Vega, in signature Virgo fashion, objects to, because she doesn't want anyone to think that she needs help with her classes. The students all receive wish pendants that will magically aid them on their missions, which are these jewels that are fashioned into various accessories. Sage's is, I think, the only one that is actually a literal pendant. Later, Cassie's uncle visits, which creates an awkward situation because he tells Sage that Cassie's parents have both passed away, or in Starland terms, began their afterglow. This creates an awkward situation because Cassie had lied earlier about both of her parents still being alive. She apologizes for lying in what was actually a really touching way, but she does ask Sage to please never bring up her dead parents ever again. Afterwards, Sage is summoned by Lady Stella for the Star Darlings' very first mission. The base of operations is this secret network of underground caverns that is known to only a few select members of the school faculty. This is important, and it will come up a lot throughout the books, but it's honestly kind of confusing. I don't think I ever really understood exactly what the visual of this cave system was supposed to be. But anyways, once all the Star Darlings are there, there is a ceremony of the wish orbs selecting which of them will go to Earth and grant it. Of course, Sage is chosen to be the very first. Starlings travel to Wish World by means of falling stars. Star Wranglers will lasso the stars mid-fall, attach them to it, and then they are, in Sage's words, flung into the heavens. So here's how the whole wish-granting process works, because I don't want to explain this 12 separate times. Once they're on Earth, the Star Darling in question will disguise herself as a human girl. They're equipped with their wish pendant, which stores their wish energy, a backpack personally given to them by Lady Stella, and a Star Zap, which is basically a magical iPhone that gives them directions to their wisher and also some basic instructions. Once they find their wisher, they have to manually identify what it is that they want and help make it come true. They have a limited amount of time to do this, and if they don't, the mission fails. The Star Darlings all also have a unique special power, but it's up to them to find out what it is. Every Starling, though, has this power to brainwash adults. It is not ever fully explained, but when adults are around Starlings, they smell some kind of nostalgic childhood dessert, and for some reason this makes them more open to suggestion. It's as weird as it sounds, but they all do this many times throughout these books. Predictably, on Earth, Sage acts like a total clueless alien, but most students just assume she's joking around, and she manages to endear herself to a group of girls. None of them are her wisher, but they do identify 2 other possible suspects. Genevieve, who is the meanest and most spoiled girl in school, and Jane, another new student who seems to act pretty awkward and aloof, leaving most other students to resent her. She also discovers her special power, though, which is reading other people's thoughts. Sage assumes that her wisher must be Jane, feeling affirmed when her wish pendant glows in Jane's presence. Jane tells Sage that her mom convinced her to invite everyone to her birthday party, but not a single person RSVP'd. So Sage speculates that the wish she needs to grant is everyone coming to her party. She spends some time with Jane and helps her to become more confident and approachable to her classmates. Even though it seems like the wish mission is going well, Sage's wish energy levels start to rapidly deplete. On the day of her birthday party, Tessa shows up. This is another recurring thing that will happen in almost every book. Not Tessa specifically, just another Star Darling coming down to help out towards the end of the mission. Tessa helps Sage see that Jane isn't her wisher. Genevieve, the mean girl, was, except she's not actually mean. She's just rich and socially awkward, so everyone just assumed she was mean. She's actually been complimenting Sage throughout this entire book, but Sage just assumed she was being sarcastic. Her wish is for people to see that she's actually a nice person who wants friends, so Sage brings her to the party, helps her use her fashion skills to get along with all her classmates there. Genevieve's wish is granted, and it manifests into positive wish energy that Sage absorbs into her pendant. Back home, Genevieve's wish transforms into a power crystal, this purple gem that Lady Stella gives to Sage. She doesn't explain the significance of it, she just tells Sage to protect it with her life. Stella loves to withhold important information. It is basically her favorite pastime. At the very end, Sage discovers that Cassie is housing a pet glow fur in their room, which is against the rules, but she promises not to say anything. Then she falls asleep, exhausted, but proud of herself. Which brings us to the first Star Darlings webisode. The first webisode, Star Charmed, is also the longest, if you don't count the TV special at the very end. It runs about 7 minutes, where the others are between 3 and 4 minutes long. It's also the only one, again, aside from the finale, to directly adapt one of the books, though with some differences. The episode covers the scene in Sage's book where Lady Stella gathers all of the Star Darlings and explains their purpose. However, here, Lady Stella tells the girls that they are all part of an ancient prophecy that says that 12 star-charmed starlings will grant 12 wishes and save Starland from an energy crisis. In the books, this is the case, but Lady Stella intentionally withholds all of this information until much later in the book series. Anyways, worth noting, all the Star Darlings appear in this episode, but only 5 get any dialogue or characterization. Sage, of course, plus Leona, Vega, Scarlet, and Libby. Vivica also makes an appearance to taunt Sage at the end, but Lady Stella physically abuses her with her powers. Actually. Which brings me to one of my primary issues with the webisodes. They are, for some reason, just, very mean-spirited and awkward. But on a good note, I do like the character models and the adaptation of the art style. The cell shading, a little rough around the edges, but the animation itself usually isn't bad. The second episode, Wish House Rocked, also seems to take place at some point during Sage's book, before her wish mission. She breaks into the wish house, which is where the wish orbs are stored until they're ready to be granted. She forces Cassie along with her, even though what they're doing is against the rules, and Cassie is visibly uncomfortable the entire time. They run into Scarlet, who is supposed to be guarding the wish house. She threatens to report both of them and get them expelled because she doesn't like them. But they threaten in turn to tell that Scarlet wasn't paying attention when they broke in. So they essentially blackmail each other into staying quiet about it. Do you see what I mean? The third episode, Wishers 101, features the main 5 girls receiving a lecture from Professor Ursa, one of the more aggressive school faculty, basically about how humans are weird and Earth is a terrible, scary place. In a rare moment of bonding for the webisodes, Scarlet cheers up the other 4 girls because she has a personal interest in Earth. She walks off and the girls all agree that she knows her stuff, even if they still think she's weird and moody. Libby and the class selection. Libby's book. Her story opens with her waking up in bed, surrounded by flowers that were left in her dorm room the night before. Libby can't tell what kind of flower they are, but her and her roommate, Gemma, disagree on what it is that they smell like. In response, Libby calls Gemma crazy. She just up and says, "You're crazy," exact quote. But the narration tells us that this is actually unusual for them, and they typically get along really well. We also get some of Libby's backstory. Both her parents are investment bankers and are extremely wealthy. They dote on and they spoil Libby, but she almost seems resentful of her own wealth, or at least she prefers to be more charitable and generous than her parents are. All the Star Darlings have taken to eating their meals together, and at breakfast that morning, everyone is tense and hostile to one another. Later, Leona announces that she wants to start a band and encourages all the Star Darlings to audition. When the auditions roll around, however, they find that somehow news about the auditions had gotten out to the entire school, and that makes it an official school-sanctioned event, so it's overseen by a professor to ensure fairness. It also humiliates Leona when she has to audition for her own band, and the school bully, Vivica, shows up to audition as well. Before we get any results, though, Libby gets a notification that the next wish orb has been identified, and she's chosen to go on the next mission. Worth noting, she is far better at Sage at blending in with humans. She's just as confused with, human concepts, but she's better at hiding it and also just has a more genial personality. I'm kind of grateful that so far the books have been pretty lenient with the way the Star Darlings adjust to human society. It could have been a lot crueler in its execution. I'm just really, really glad I didn't have to sit through 12 books worth of just constant secondhand embarrassment. Her wish turns out to be involved in a class election between these 2 former best friends, Ava, her wisher, and Christy. Libby suspects that Ava's wish is to win, but the real issue is a little deeper. This campaign is micromanaged by Ava's friend Waverly, who pressures her to suppress her real personality in favor of a more serious presidential persona. Libby, however, is able to help Ava create a campaign that is more fun and suited to her. And because it is 2015, it involves fake mustaches. Oh, also, Libby's power is transforming objects. She makes a bunch of fake mustaches. Eventually, Sage arrives, and Libby realizes that Ava's wish is actually to repair her friendship with Christy, which this election had drove a wedge into. So instead of focusing on the election, she helps the 2 reconcile, and they agree to share the presidency. Wish granted. Back at the school, the band results are revealed. Leona, Sage, Vega, Scarlet, and Libby make the cut, with Leona as the lead singer. But Libby once again finds herself becoming increasingly more annoyed with Gemma, and the feeling seems to be mutual. This book ends on a more suspenseful note, with Lady Stella privately telling Scarlet some bad news. Leona's unlucky mission. The next introduction is a letter from Leona to her parents. She tells them that Scarlet had to move out, long story, and she doesn't seem particularly sad about the situation at all. Libby's book got into it a little bit, but the 2 never really got along. From Leona's point of view, she seemed to view Scarlet as moody and very difficult to talk to. She also tells them about her band and that they have a manager and songwriter now, Clover. She's interrupted one evening by a surprise summons to Lady Stella's office, where she meets up with Sage, Libby, and Vega. Stella, uncharacteristically irritable, tells them off for naming the band the Star Darlings, since their group and its name was supposed to remain a secret. Leona explains that this wasn't her doing, since both the name and the lineup were chosen at random through this fairness protocol after someone tried to tamper with the auditions. Stella accepts this, but she still seems pretty visibly unsettled. When the Star Darlings gather for lunch, they talk about how Scarlet seems to have just disappeared. They don't get very far into the conversation, though, because they all start fighting with one another. They all seem very specifically to be hostile towards their roommates, but also just kind of in a bad mood in general. Leona doesn't really miss Scarlet, but she realizes eventually that she does need Scarlet for the band, since Scarlet plays the drums. Unfortunately, she's still nowhere to be found even after band rehearsal rolls around. Vivica is, though, and she taunts them by saying that she started her own band, Vivica and the Visionaries. Later, Stella introduces a new student, Ophelia, the real 12th Star Darling who is replacing Scarlet due to some kind of mix-up. Ophelia is constantly described as being very meek and unremarkable and forgettable. The narration is kind of very mean to her. Leona does try to take her under her wing since she's her new roommate, but she finds her kind of difficult to connect to. She doesn't have any hobbies or interests, and her side of the room doesn't even have any furniture or personal belongings. Very strange. Soon after, Leona receives her mission and travels to an isolated boarding school for young girls. Her wisher, Lily, is a shy girl who dreams of winning the school talent show. At least that's what Leona assumes. After witnessing Lily get mocked and belittled by both classmates and her older sister, Leona sets out to help her shine. She even plans to perform with her, believing that that will boost Lily's confidence. But Vega shows up, and she helps Leona see that maybe she's been projecting, assuming that Lily wants all the same things that she does, and also she, kind of attempted to take that spotlight for herself. So on the night of the show, Leona pulls out and encourages Lily to go on solo. When Lily is heckled, however, her sister stands up for her, giving her the courage she needs to perform on her own. The wish is granted, and Leona shares a very sweet, very touching goodbye before Lily's memories of her are erased. And that's what happens, by the way, at the end of all the missions. They hug, and then they forget ever meeting the Star Darlings. Once they return, though, Leona finds that the orb refuses to change, and that her wish pendant is all black and burnt up, destroyed, essentially. No one knows what could have caused it, but it means that all the wish energy she gathered was for nothing. Lady Cordial takes it away to be inspected, but Leona is crushed and dejected by what she considers to be a failure of her mission. Oh, also, there was no mention of Leona's special power in this book. Vega and the Fashion Disaster. Here we go. It's Virgo time. This one opens up with Vega musing about her roommate, Piper. She's as meticulous and as neat as Vega is, but that seems to be where these similarities end. Where Vega is in the puzzle club, Piper joined the meditation club. Vega's style is crisp, polished, and neat, almost to the point of being severe. Piper, on the other hand, is dreamy, ethereal, and, in Vega's words, seems to own more nightgowns and pajamas than she does regular clothes. Vega is practical, direct, and serious. Piper is emotional and empathetic to a fault. Vega notes that things between them have been pretty tense lately after some flowers were mysteriously delivered to their room, and honestly, pretty outright hostile on Vega's part. If you recall, this is the case for every pair of roommates lately, and although I haven't been going super in-depth in these summaries, I will say this specific plot point was something I was really tired of by this point. Because Scarlet is MIA and Leona is in a foul mood after her mission's failure, the Star Darlings band is tabled for the time being. Vega self-narrates some more, and we learn a bit more about her life. Vega was raised by a single mom, a nurse who worked busy and long hours during her childhood, which made Vega self-sufficient, but also quite lonely. She finds that she cares a lot about being a star darling because she enjoys being part of a group. And this strange tension between all of its members is really starting to get to her. She and Cassie, though, are able to determine that it must be these weird, mysterious flowers that are causing them to all act this way. It was mostly Cassie, actually, with Vega actually arguing the opposite, but she still agrees to get them examined by a botany lab. Before they get any results, though, Vega is chosen for her wish mission. Vega's wisher is a girl named Ella, whose mom is a famous fashion designer and seems to be well-liked and admired by all her peers. Vega actually has a hard time befriending her, though, and has to find out all this information basically secondhand. She thinks that Ella must feel lonely because her mom is so busy and unable to attend any school events, but after some investigating, actually finds out that Ella is self-conscious because her mom isn't anyone famous and she's not as wealthy as her classmates. Vega is able to relate because she also came from a pretty modest household. For everything that Starland doesn't have, they seem to have retained capitalism, unfortunately. But she helps Ella come clean to her classmates and find friends who appreciate her for who she is. Fortunately, Vega has no issues with the wish being granted like Leona did, and is able to reconcile with Piper. She ends the book with a new appreciation for her own mother, having learned from Ella how important it is to be proud of where you come from. She also gets a mysterious text from Scarlet, saying that they need to talk. Hi, editing here. I forgot to mention Vega's special power. Hers is mind control, but it's different from the kind of mind control that starlings use on adults. I guess the distinction is that hers works on anyone, not just adults, but I'm not actually entirely sure. The fourth webisode, Illuminated, is about Vega doing research into the imminent energy crisis that Lady Stella talked about, so I'm choosing to place it after her book. She talks about who she believes could be behind it, her suspects being Vivica, Professor Ursa, and Scarlet, because none of them like Scarlet. Scarlet walks in and sees them do this, and they tell her to her face that they think she's a super negative dark rain cloud. Somehow she isn't too offended and gets distracted by Vega's research on an element called negatite, which is the physical byproduct of negative energy. They agree that Scarlet should stay on Vega's suspect list. Episode 5, Super Zoomy, focuses on Libby going through her vacation photos. She talks about a boy she met there, and he calls her in that same episode to ask her to a dance later in the month. Yeah, that's all that happens in this one. Oh, and Clover gets exactly one line. It's definitely just filler, but also just weird in a way that's difficult to convey just through summaries. Like, there's several moments where the girls essentially belittle Cassie just for liking books, and almost all the Star Darlings episode carry this weird, bizarre undercurrent of tension between all the girls.
Had the most amazing library.
Well, I wouldn't know about that. I actually went to see interesting things in New Prism, Cassie.
What's the Shining Star Dance?
Cassie, I appreciate that you want to be well-read, but you really need to take your nose out of a book now and again.
Maybe I can blame it on the evil flowers from the books. That plot isn't covered at all in the webisodes, but they have to assume it's why they all seem to secretly resent each other. Scarlet discovers true strength. So Scarlet is still alive, and she's actually still at the school, too. She's just been hiding and avoiding everyone, and also doing some investigating of her own. No offense to Scarlet, this was probably my least favorite book. A lot of it is spent with Scarlet just, like, sitting around and brooding and being angry. But we do learn that she's been aware of the caves underneath the school for a while, even before Stella brought them all down there. And she knows of a few other entrances too. So while exploring and sneaking around the school, she finds the records room and discovers that someone switched her test scores and Ophelia's. So Ophelia has scores that should be Scarlet's. She tells this to Lady Cordial, who assures her that it will be taken care of. Realizing that there is perhaps a conspiracy afoot, she goes with Cassie and Vega to hear the results of the flower analysis, and it turns out all the flowers have been imbued with negative energy, which is something that should not exist freely on Starland. A wish orb gets identified, but Scarlet isn't able to go along. In fact, to her immense disappointment, the orb chooses Ophelia. She leaves, and Scarlet goes back to sulking until her and Leona get in a confrontation. Leona gets some kind of notification about Ophelia's status, which Scarlet eavesdrops on, and in the meeting, she overhears that Ophelia hasn't actually made any sort of progress in granting the wish. The wish orb needs someone to help, and actually, this time it chooses Scarlet from her hiding spot. Turns out, Ophelia never even identified the wisher. She's been in the same spot for several days, just hiding and cowering. Ophelia tries to get Scarlet to take over, but Scarlet says that Ophelia has to be the one to complete the mission. So she helps encourage her, and they find a girl named Arden. Arden's dilemma is that she has a fear of butterflies due to a childhood trauma, which is impeding her progress in a group experiment in her science class. Scarlet and Ophelia make actually kind of a good team. Ophelia is patient and empathetic, which gets Arden to open up, while Scarlet is able to cover for Ophelia's mishaps and her lack of Earth knowledge. Together, the two help Arden overcome her fear and become friendly with butterflies. The wish energy, though, flows into Scarlet's pendant, not Ophelia's. Upon their return, Lady Stella apologizes to Scarlet and assures her that there is no doubt she is indeed a star darling. Ophelia, however, very much is not. Hearing that, however, it seems to come as a relief to Ophelia, who looks almost happy to be relieved of her duty. The 6th webisode, Rising Starlings, centers on Cassie. It starts with Vivica coming into their room, presumably up to no good, but Sage physically assaults her with pillows until she runs out. The two go to the Wish World observation deck. They run into some obstacles along the way, but thanks to Sage using her wish energy manipulation powers, they get there just fine. Cassie starts to feel insecure about her own abilities, but Sage reassures her, and the two share a pretty sweet, sincere moment. Since Cassie seems more confident at the end of this one, I like to think it takes place before her own book. Cassie comes through. So you might have noticed that out of all the secondary characters, Cassie is the only one that keeps regularly popping up in both the webisodes and the other books. I get the distinct impression that she is actually the author's favorite character, and for that reason, she has a lot more screen time, I think even than Sage does in these books. The story opens properly by reminding us that Cassie is illegally keeping a pet Glowfur in her dorm, which Sage knows about. She reminisces about how the pet used to belong to her late mother, and keeping it helps Cassie feel closer to her. Also, Glowfurs have magical songs. This is very important information. Cassie also takes it upon herself to rid the Star Darlings' dorms of these weird mood-warping flowers that everyone else has gotten weirdly attached to. It's not easy, but she pulls it off. She also has a heart-to-heart with Ophelia, and the two bond over being orphans. Yes, it was mentioned at some point that Ophelia actually grew up in an orphanage, so Cassie feels a lot of sympathy for her. Ophelia does have this strange slip-up where she refers to her mom in the present tense, but Cassie shrugs it off. For now. Later, the girls are invited to a mysterious mani-pedi party in the school lounge. Just the 12 of them, suspiciously. But they have a good time painting their nails, then they wake up the next day, acting completely off. Cassie is suddenly very vain. Sage can't stop laughing. Vega only talks in rhyme. Gemma takes things way too literally. Libby is comatose. She can't wake up. None of them seem to realize, though, and Cassie is on the next wish mission before any of that can even be addressed. Once her wish mission begins, Cassie meets two girls of interest. Annabelle, a straight-laced, obnoxious girl who's obsessed with being student of the month, and Lila, her wisher, who's established as the class clown. But Lila doesn't seem to take anything seriously, and Cassie has a very difficult time getting her to open up about her wish. Eventually, though, she gets close enough to Lila for her to admit that she's insecure about her schoolwork, and she keeps making jokes because she wants to impress her teacher and get her attention. Cassie helps Lila see that she's a patient and kind person, and that's all she needs to succeed, rather than vying for attention. Unfortunately, Annabelle sabotages all her attempts at actually doing well in school. This time, Scarlet shows up to help. Again. And since Cassie's power is changing the volume of people's voices, she amplifies Annabelle's voice when she starts to berate and tease Scarlet, and also amplifies Lila's when she defends Scarlet. It's loud enough that both the teacher and the principal overhear, who scold Annabelle and praise Lila. Lila is named Student of the Month, and right out of one of those fake Tumblr posts, everyone applauds. After a successful mission, Cassie's new, much more egocentric personality has only been made worse, much to the chagrin of Lady Stella. In the epilogue, Cassie summons all of the Star Darlings to her room and declares that she knows who is behind all of the sabotage. Ophelia. Turns out she did catch Ophelia's slip-up and has determined that she must be lying about being an orphan. And when they all go to Ophelia's room to confront her, they find it empty, save for a message scrawled onto the wall. I'm sorry. Piper's Perfect Dream. Piper's story kicks off on Star Kindness Day, her absolute favorite holiday in Starland. A day where everyone meets up and they all exchange heartfelt compliments. This year, she has meticulously crafted personalized poems for all her friends. Also, fun fact, Piper is kind of psychic in a way that is actually very important to the plot, but she has a nightmare and accurately predicts that she's going on the next wish mission. Before that, though, chaos erupts. Star Kindness Day becomes a fiasco when everyone receives these brutally insulting messages instead of compliments. Of course, they're not the real messages, someone tampered with them, and even after Lady Stella clears the mix-up, the emotional damage lingers. So to patch things up, Stella has them deliver compliments in person, which leads to an impromptu group sleepover. They all get along, but they still have their weird quirks from the last book. Cassie is still bragging nonstop. Sage is still laughing at everything. Libby is still asleep, etc. It's very strongly and unsubtly implied that their new manicures, the nail polish, are what is causing it. When Piper goes on her mission, she pretty much immediately learns her special power. She can see through walls. There are definitely degrees of usefulness to all these powers. Anyways, her wisher is a girl named Olivia who works at a family diner. The kind able to get around child labor laws, because Piper also gets herself hired as a waitress. And she thinks that Olivia's wish must be for the diner to get more customers, which Piper manages to do pretty much by accident when she introduces the populace to chocolate egg creams, which is a drink that contains neither egg nor cream, but chocolate syrup and carbonated water. It is apparently a New York thing. I don't know. I think it sounds absolutely foul, but apparently everyone in this book really loves it. That's not Olivia's wish, though, and after going through a series of diner-related mishaps, we learn that her wish doesn't actually have anything to do with the diner at all. Astra shows up to help, and they have a slumber party with all of Olivia's friends, and they get another manicure. They're able to wash off this evil, toxic nail polish. And now that they're bonding, Piper is able to coax it out of Olivia that her and her friends all cheated on a test at school, and the guilt has been eating them alive. So Piper convinces them to come clean and get it off their chests. The wish is granted. Piper and Astra return home. Piper gets her power crystal. The end. The 7th webisode, The Star Dipper, is about Vivica's attempts to bully the Star Darlings. When she tries to telekinetically pour a glass of juice onto Scarlet, She gets her comeuppance when Scarlet uses her wish energy powers to, again, physically assault her. And that's the webisode. I'm not against, portrayals of bullying in children's media. Obviously, these things happen. People like Vivica exist. I just don't know if I necessarily see the positive entertainment value in a whole episode dedicated to what is basically just a physical altercation between two girls with no positive messages or morals or lessons. It just seems completely at odds with what the books are trying to do. I don't know, maybe I am being just too harsh on the webisodes. They're not unwatchable. And there are some good moments, like the one between Sage and Cassie earlier. That was probably my favorite webisode. It was really cute. But I just don't know if they're necessarily a good representation of the series, if that makes sense. Episode 8, Shining Starlings, sees the arrival of a bad wish orb. As a reminder, these are known to be pretty toxic and dangerous to starlings. Vivica tries to prove her worth by dealing with it on her own, but she gets electrocuted and blasted by the negative energy. So while she's unconscious, the Stardarlings work together to use their powers to get rid of it. Lady Stella shows up, and she says she watched the whole thing, so she presumably just stood there while one of her students got injured and 5 others attempted to do something extremely dangerous. Again, Lady Stella kinda sucks. Astra's mixed up mission. This one opens up with Astra writing a memo to Piper and Cassie, basically summarizing all the strange things they've been through together as a group. The flowers, Leona's failed mission, Ophelia, and now everyone acting very strangely. Cassie is unresponsive, so her and Piper basically go through all the Stardarlings one by one and identify their strange new quirks. They also figure out that all the girls are completely unaware of their strange behaviors. Astra goes to art class, where she struggles a bit. She doesn't consider herself to be a very creative person. Instead, her skill set is in the realm of athletics. She gets in the swing of things, though, and impresses her teacher after she covers herself in paint in order to color the canvas. On her way to wash herself off, though, she bumps into a mysterious woman in a dark cloak coming out of Lady Stella's office. Addendum to an earlier note, the book does mention that paint is the only substance that can stain clothes on Starland. While she's in Lady Stella's office, she takes the opportunity to ask about Ophelia's whereabouts, and we're told that she returned to the orphanage and was actually in the process of being adopted by a new family. Supposedly. Then later, during a Stardarlings meeting, Astra has an idea. She plays a recording of the group from earlier, which finally gets them to realize that they have been acting very bizarre. She and Piper piece together that it was washing off their nail polish that made them feel normal again, but none of the other girls' polish can be removed. It can't be removed by anything except nail polish remover from Earth, naturally. But tabling that for now, Piper and Astra go to the only orphanage in Starland City to find Ophelia and hopefully get some answers from her. There is a girl named Ophelia there, but it isn't their Ophelia, so and the staff insists that she's the only one by that name at the orphanage. On the way back, they get the ping. Another wish orb has been identified, and surprise, Astra is up next. Oh, also, Astra gets a very brief romance subplot in this book. It doesn't really go anywhere, but she keeps running into this guy from the boys' school that she very clearly has a crush on. Anyways, Astra goes to Wish World. We find out her special power, teleportation, and then she does the whole mind control song and dance to enroll herself in her wisher's school. She doesn't find her wisher immediately, but she does hear 2 announcements. One for a gymnastics competition, which excites her, and one for a student art show, which is less exciting for her. But gee, I do wonder which one of these will be relevant to the wish she needs to grant and teach her a valuable life lesson in the process. Her wisher is a girl named Emma, who has 3 gymnastics-obsessed sisters and 2 very gymnastic-obsessed parents. Astra cheers Emma on to victory in the gymnastics competition, but That clearly wasn't her real wish. Libby joins in to help, and they realize Emma's true passion is art, something she's been afraid to tell her family. So they help her finish her art project, and she comes clean about what she actually wants. Emma enters the art show, wins, and gets her wish granted. Astra returns to Starland, now with several bottles of Earth nail polish remover, and Leona also manages to track down the real Ophelia and calls her. It turns out she did lie about being an orphan, and she did it because her grades weren't good enough to get into Starling Academy on her own merit. But she was told that if she followed a specific set of instructions and pretended to be someone else, she'd be accepted. And who gave her those instructions? According to her, it was Lady Stella. Dun dun dun. Tessa's Lost and Found. Tessa's book starts with her messaging one of her teachers to ask for an extension on a paper. The Star Darlings classes have interfered a lot with her schedule, and her grades are actually starting to slip because of it. But we also get the implication that Tessa in general is just someone who's pretty flighty and easily distracted. Tessa and Gemma are sisters, and their family is from a large farm out in the countryside. It's said that even though Tessa is fond of luxury, she also adores life on the farm, and is a lot more acclimated to it than her sister is. Anyways, her story opens with her having an early morning meeting with the Star Darlings. Despite what Ophelia had told them in the last book, they're not entirely convinced that the sabotage is all due to Lady Stella, most of all Tessa, who actually really admires her. And because Tessa is someone who is kind of absent-minded and just prefers not to focus on her troubles, she gets lost in her favorite distraction, which is baking. And she's also very, very good at baking, but doing so does make her late to class one day, where she gets bullied by a girl named Violetta. And Violetta, notably, is friends with Vivica. Later on, Cassie mentions that at some point she had gotten her Star Zap repaired, and that the technician mentioned that her texts were actually being rerouted to another device. There's a lot of back and forth on whether or not it was Lady Stella who had done it, which eventually ends in them getting an alert that another wish orb has been identified. And of course, it's Tessa's turn. She's led to an animal shelter where she signs on as a volunteer. Before she meets her wisher, though, she learns her special power is being able to communicate with animals. Yes, again, some powers are definitely more useful than others. It takes her until the next day, but she does meet her wisher, this talkative girl named Lizzie that actually reminds Tessa a lot of her little sister. And after basically interrogating Lizzie, she learns that Lizzie is moving to Australia in 2 days. But she's not unhappy with the decision and seems to have basically no regrets or lingering unhappiness at all. But she does eventually break down and admits that it was an act. She doesn't actually want to move. Her parents are in the military and they move around a lot, which has been hard on her. Her wish isn't necessarily to stay in town, though. Rather, she wants to find something about the move that makes her happy. After a big storm, the animal shelter's roof caves in. Fortunately, no animals are hurt, partially thanks to the animals alerting Tessa to the emergency in the first place. They all work together to help transport the animals outside and to other shelters. And in order to help the shelter raise funds for a new roof, they set up an online fundraiser. And Lizzie uses her connections in all the places she used to live to help the fundraiser reach its goal. There's another small hiccup towards the end where Lizzie loses her own dog right before they're about to leave the country, but Tessa uses her powers again to help find it. And showing her how much impact she's made from having friends in so many different places, Tessa is able to grant Lizzie's wish. Oh, also Adora showed up right at the very end. She literally didn't do anything, though. In the epilogue, Cassie, Scarlet, and Tessa discover a secret room in the underground caves that seem to belong to whoever has been spying on them, only for the door to shut behind them and for them to get locked inside. Adora finds a friend. This book opens up with a text from Cassie, who had scheduled it in advance to send in case her group didn't make it out of the underground cavern. This means that they've been down there for 3 days now. Adora, up to this point, has probably been the least present character in the entire series. She's gotten very little screen time. Even with the nail polish thing, her curse was that she talked so quietly that nobody could hear her. We do learn a little bit about her here, though, since, it is her POV, in regards to how her biggest interests are science and fashion, and she loves to combine them. So they need to rescue Tessa, Cassie, and Scarlet. For the expedition, Adora is nominated as the leader. She does manage to get them all successfully to break into Lady Stella's office and into the caves, but also overhear Lady Stella talking about the energy crisis. Apparently, there's a lot of power outages, and some schools are even shutting down because of the lack of energy. But fortunately, she's able to find the trapped girls and open the door. Tessa, Cassie, and Scarlet talk about a book they found down there in this secret room, a prophecy that says that 12 star-charmed starlings will gather powerful wish energy and save Starland. The girls, of course, deduce that it refers to the 12 of them. But they spend too long talking about it and get locked in again. Fortunately, Adora finds a door hidden behind a bookcase that leads to another part of the cavern, specifically the part of the cavern where they all conduct their Star Darlings meetings. And Lady Stella is already there to tell them that a wish orb has been identified, though she doesn't seem to know anything about the secret room or them all being locked in there. Anyways, Adora gets dropped off at a summer camp where she meets her wisher, a girl named Hannah, who is painfully shy and emotional, and she just wants the confidence to make some new friends. Adora is unfortunately a little too blunt and rational to be very helpful at first, but she does discover that she has healing powers after Hannah gets stung by bees, which helps, ingratiate her a little more. In a pretty interesting development, Adora reverts back to her starling form, and Hannah sees her in it, which prompts Adora to tell her the entire truth, the whole story, and the two bond while dealing with Adora's problem and become pretty close. And when Cassie comes down to help Adora because there's no progress on the wish, she's the one to point out that Adora kind of already granted Hannah's wish without either of them realizing it. The two of them became friends. So armed with, this newfound confidence that Adora helped her gain, Hannah goes on to make some more friends at camp, which grants her wish and gives Adora the wish energy. In the epilogue, Leona reveals that while they were all in Lady Stella's office, she found her wish pendant, the one that had gotten all broken and burnt up, which meant that Lady Stella never sent it off to get fixed or examined. This is enough to convince all the Star Darlings that Lady Stella is guilty. The 9th episode, Superstars, is just about 3 minutes of Leona singing loudly and annoying all the other characters while they yell at her. Scarlet attempts to drown out Leona's singing by playing the drums, but it turns into an impromptu jam session. Side note, Leona is seen vacuuming, which is a continuity error, because as I said, there are no cleaning utensils on Starland because there's no mess. In episode 10, Just Dancing, Leona and Libby insult Vega for not being a very good dancer and opt to teach her how to dance their way, though they both disagree on how to do it and start fighting. Quite viciously, might I add. Vega has to blast them and tell them both that it's okay to be an individual. I don't know. This was another, just a really weird one. Clover's parent fix. This one opens with Clover in the middle of writing a song. She muses about how, even though she's the writer for the Star Darlings band, she prefers to stay out of the spotlight because she comes from a big circus family and she's basically had enough performing for her entire life. A call from her family is interrupted by an alert that an important school-wide announcement will be made in the auditorium. Everyone goes, and Lady Cordial is there to tell everyone that Lady Stella has been called away due to a family emergency. And since Lady Cordial is next in line, she will be temporarily in charge of the school. We learn that actually, at some point between Adora's book and this one, the Star Darlings confronted Lady Stella with all their evidence and accused her directly of the sabotage. In response, Lady Stella just disappears, quite literally in a puff of smoke, and no one has seen her since. Which, of course, makes her look incredibly guilty, but that brings us to our current dilemma. In a meeting with the Star Darlings, Lady Cordial actually claims that she was the one to find the book that had this prophecy that identified the 12 of them as the Star Darlings, while Lady Stella was reluctant to have anything to do with them. The girls want to check on the wish orbs, but Lady Cordial pointedly sends them on a day trip to another school who's supposedly rumored to be using an alternative energy. It turns out to be a dead end, though, and meanwhile, energy blackouts are becoming a lot more frequent. During one of Astra's games, a blackout happens and it causes a mass panic, essentially, but Cassie brings out her secret glowfur and tells it to sing the Song of Calmness. It works, diffusing at least one crisis. Then, later that night, Clover is awakened by Piper, who is mysteriously sleepwalking and beckoning for her to follow. Piper, asleep, leads her to the Wish Orb, which is actually active right now and almost out of time, and she, in some kind of trance, urges Clover to leave immediately. So Clover does. The two sneak in so they can get on a star, and Clover rides it to a mall on Wish World, where she meets her wisher, this rebellious girl named Ruby. Ruby is currently in an argument with her mom because she got a purple streak in her hair without permission. Her mom is pretty old-fashioned, and Ruby just wants to stop being treated like a little kid. Clover realizes that's probably her wish. So Clover spends the next day trying to help Ruby prove that she's mature and responsible to her mom, but really only succeeds in making her mom more frustrated with her. When Ruby is grounded and Clover realizes that she only has 15 minutes left to grant this wish, she almost gives up and leaves, but discovers her secret power: stopping time, which is incredibly convenient. They use this extra time to clean Ruby's incredibly messy room, which impresses her mom, and the two have a genuine heart-to-heart that grants her wish. In the epilogue, Lady Cordial somehow figures out that all of the backpacks that Lady Stella had given to the Star Darlings before their missions had these keychains that were imbued with negative energy. They also find out, after looking through one of Sage's photo albums, that this mysterious cloaked woman who has been seen with Lady Stella is Sage's mother. The 11th webisode, Dear Libby, is easily the worst one. I actually remember watching this one back when it first aired and being really perplexed. Clover's back for this one. She and all the other main characters, minus Libby, meet up to talk about how much they don't like Libby, which is not even exaggeration. They think she's annoying because she talks too much about boys and the color pink. There's even a part where Libby is just sitting there, quietly minding her own business, and the girls prompt a conversation so she can say something that annoys them, and they can record it and mix it into a song. Yes, rather than talking to their friend and telling them how they feel, they decide to secretly record her and turn her voice into a song in order to have an intervention to show her how badly she's been annoying them all. Fortunately, Libby actually likes the song, but the episode just ends with all her friends hating her. So, episode 12, Paint by Numbers, is the last standard webisode, and it doesn't actually really fit in the timeline because Lady Stella is present, but I don't know where else I would put it. For an art assignment, Lady Stella shows a bunch of random objects, and she asks the girls to paint how they make them feel. Leona paints something abstract, and Vega paints the objects exactly as they appear. So Lady Stella gives Leona a good grade and Vega a bad one. Leona later explains that Vega didn't really follow the instructions and after she accidentally mixes her food together, Vega realizes that maybe there's some value in being imperfect, I guess. Again, I really have no idea what sorts of messages these webisodes want to impart. I also just think Lady Stella kind of sucks. That assignment was stupid, and how dare she disrespect my Virgo sister. Gemma and the ultimate standoff. So, because Sage's mother is a renowned and respected scientist, the Star Darlings all unanimously agree that this means Lady Stella must actually be innocent of everything that they accused her of. Also because it's the final character-focused book and we kinda need to get a move on. But they all draft a formal apology text and plead with her to please come back and lead their school, because Lady Cordial is kind of an incompetent leader. There's another school-wide assembly in which Lady Cordial announces her plans for Starshine Day, which seems to be a pretty big Starland holiday. Everyone's surprised that she isn't postponing the celebration, giving, the impending societal collapse, but she has Vivica's band come up and play and get the crowd excited. Leona, feeling petty, gives everyone earplugs so they don't hear the song, but notice afterwards that all their fellow students are acting pretty strangely, all way too excited for Starshine Day. In fact, it seems like everyone has a single-minded focus exclusively on Starshine Day. In the midst of preparations, though, Gemma's wish orb is identified. Lady Cordial shows it to her, but she notices that it looks a little different from the others. Lady Cordial, however, insists that it's only because this mission, the 12th one, is the most important. Her mission brings her to a pumpkin farm the day before Halloween. She immediately meets two girls, Zoe and Cece, and realizes Zoe is her wisher. Zoe really wants to be friends with these two twin sisters, Maddie and Kayla, who are popular and also quite snobby. Cece even calls them fake. Gemma only has 24 hours to accomplish this, to get Zoe to befriend them. And during a carnival on Halloween Day, Leona shows up and she says that she heard a voice in her head that told her she needed to be the one to come help out Gemma. Unfortunately for Gemma, though, she realizes too late that by helping Zoe befriend Maddie and Kayla, who are actually pretty terrible friends, that meant excluding and humiliating Cece. She had granted a selfish wish, and her wish pendant absorbs all the negative energy. Fortunately, Gemma discovers that she has possibly the most convenient and also most overpowered special power of them all. She has the power to turn back time, so she's able to reverse the wish and convince Zoe that Cece is the friend that she needs to prioritize. She makes it back just in time for Starshine Day, where Vega finds her and leads her to where they're hiding out Lady Stella and Indira, Sage's mom. So, this is a little convoluted, but when they all confronted Lady Stella and she realized that she was being framed, rather than explain herself, she chose to teleport away and to regroup with Sage's mom in the underground caves. However, there was a collapse and they became trapped inside. They realized, however, that they were in a glowfur cave. So they taught the glowfurs a song that said where they were, and the glowfurs passed it on to the other glowfurs in the area, and it eventually made its way to Cassie's glowfur, which led the remaining Star Darlings to the two women. A lot of plot happens in this last part of the book. There's a battle of the bands that, the Star Darlings band competes in, after which Lady Cordial invites all 12 girls on stage, and she publicly announces the secret of the Star Darlings in front of the entire school. She also unveils Gemma's wish. Turns out, it was a bad wish from the start that she had sent Gemma to grant. Lady Cordial isn't Lady Cordial at all. In fact, there never was a Lady Cordial. This whole time, she had been the evil Rancora in disguise and had been the one sabotaging all their missions. Gemma might have managed to reverse the bad wish into a good one, but she couldn't negate the negative energy entirely. And because Leona's wish pendant had been destroyed, their power crystals are useless without all 12 of them. Rancora is just says all of this outright, by the way, very expository. Anyways, there's basically an impending apocalypse because Jim's wish upset the balance of negative and positive energy in Starland, and since Rancora thrives on negative energy, unlike everyone else, she will rule. Fortunately, the positive energy from Jim's wish still comes in handy when it repairs Leona's wish pendant. Lady Stella has also been holding on to Leona's wish orb, so she's able to summon Leona's power crystal from it. And with all 12, the Star Darlings are able to summon the power to not only save Starland from the energy crisis, but also to defeat Rancora, who retreats and vanishes. Lady Stella ultimately erases everyone's memories of what just transpired, though, and she says that their talents need to remain a secret for now. Even though no one knows what they accomplished, they celebrate their success together. Happy ending. The finale of the webisode series, The Power of 12, was aired as a half-hour TV special. It's actually not the first TV special, though. The first was Becoming Star Darlings, which aired in January of 2016. That one, however, was just a compilation of some of the webisodes. The Power of 12 is actually a continuation, and it aired in November of 2017. The Power of 12 is weird. It's a really, really bizarre special, because aside from the first webisode, it's the first time the Star Darlings webisode series has attempted to adapt any of the books. It actually takes place during Gemma's Wish mission. Everyone is finally voiced, by the way, so that's nice. But it decides to summarize 12 books worth of plot and information as if it was a recap. But this is all stuff that the webisodes never mentioned before. I mean, you saw their plots. They had nothing to do with the books, but it drops all of this information, the flowers, Ophelia, Leona's wish pendant breaking, as if we're supposed to have watched that happen, which you might have if you read the books, but I would wager that most of the people watching it hadn't, so it's just really strange. It also adapts the confrontation with Lady Cordial and the revelation that she is actually Rancora in disguise. But Lady Cordial hadn't ever shown up in the webisodes up to this point. The final battle plays out a little differently than it does in the books, but it ends the same way, with the girls all using their power crystals to defeat Rancora and restore power to Starland. I think, actually, this special has some cool moments. Like, the visual of Rancora shedding her Lady Cordial disguise is kind of terrifying in the best way. And it has some pretty nice action sequences too, but as a finale to the webisodes and also as an adaptation of the book series, not so good. But we do have 2 additional books to go through. Good Wish Gone Bad. This book serves as both a sequel and a prequel. It shifts POVs from the 12 Star Darlings in the aftermath of Rancora's unsuccessful attack and preparing for when she strikes again, as well as a younger Lady Stella during her days at Starling Academy. Well, her and her best friend, a girl named Cora. You probably see where this is going. Anyways, this book has some interesting plot details in the Stella sections. Apparently, the reason that all the Wishers in the prior books have been young girls is specifically because young girls make the purest wishes and grant the most wish energy. Sure, but in Stella's time, Starland is facing an energy crisis because misogyny and racism on Earth is making life too difficult for girls and women, and therefore they haven't been making enough wishes to supply them with sufficient energy. And that is not even like me extrapolating, it is very much the plot of this book. Stella's time as a student correlates to the era of segregation on Earth. And they point that out in a negative light, obviously. But Stella wants to help the young girls of Earth believe in themselves again, both out of concern for their hardships and also for her own benefit, because she wants to land this prestigious job at the Wish Tank after graduation. A little bit about Cora, though. In her childhood, her and Stella are inseparable, She's noted to be very caring and maternal, protective of Stella in particular, and also an excellent actress who aspires to be famous one day. I also get the sense that Disney didn't want us getting any ideas, because they bring up the fact that Cora has a boyfriend quite often. But guess what? Guess what, Disney? You're not going to stop me. You won't prevent me from advertising this book as peak doomed Yuri. Just look at the cover, man. Cora convinces Stella to take an unsanctioned trip to Earth in order to test their theories for improving the energy crisis. While there, they accidentally incite a girl to make a bad wish, which turns into a bad wish orb. Cora opts to travel to the facility where they store negative wish orbs and tries to destroy it, releasing an immense amount of toxic, negative energy into Starland. Stella follows her there and witnesses it, and she wants to come clean the next day so that authorities can be alerted about this negative energy leak. But since Cora attempted to stay quiet about it, the headmistress expels her, while only reprimanding Stella. Cora interprets this as a betrayal on Stella's part and starts to become influenced by the negative energy she released, turning angry and resentful and plotting her revenge. Cut to 2 years later, Stella has graduated and now has her dream job at the Wish Tank, where she's led a largely successful effort to motivate and inspire Earth girls into believing in themselves and making more wishes. We get her POV on 2 missions. In one, she helps a female athlete overcome a sprained ankle and win the gold medal at the Olympics. And in another, she helps this young aspiring scientist get an astronomy scholarship. And that girl's name? Albert Einstein, which more or less solves her generation's energy crisis. She receives word, however, that the previous headmistress of Starling Academy has passed away, and in her will named Stella her successor as headmistress, because that's apparently how succession works there. In the present day, some of the Star Darlings discover Rancora's evil secret lair within the negative energy facility, which includes her journal, where she's conveniently recorded her entire life story and all her evil exploits. Apparently, she's been making journeys to Earth to grant bad wishes, which has exposed her to more and more negative energy and made her more powerful, thus transforming her into Rancora. We get some POV from her time as Lady Cordial too, and we learn 2 very important things. One, Rancora still hates Stella with every fiber of her being, but also continues to yearn for the time when they were friends. Also, that Rancora was solely responsible for the admission of Vivica, who she said reminds her of herself. This leads to another confrontation between Stella and Rancora in modern day. It ends with both of them retreating, but also acknowledging that things can never ever go back to how they were before. Stealing Starlight. I don't remember where I bought this book from, but apparently it's an advance copy, which is cool, but I'm not actually sure if there's any major differences between this and the fully published version. I assume they wouldn't make any major changes to the plot or anything, though. For the first time, we get chapters from the POV of Vivica, and through her internal monologuing, we learn that the reason she bullies the Star Darlings is because she's secretly jealous of them. Somehow, her memory didn't get erased after the events of Gemma's book, so she knows the true nature of their group. And since she's more talented, more powerful, and prettier than any of them, she thinks that she deserves to be a member. This makes her the prime target for Rancora, who manipulates Vivica into going on a wish mission for her to grant a bad wish. She gives her the pendant with all her remaining negative energy and sends her on her way. Fortunately, Stella catches on after Vivica leaves and sends 3 of the Star Darlings to intercept her: Sage, Leona, and Scarlet. The bad wish in question involves a girl named Clara. Her school is putting on a talent show in a few days with some television producers attending it. She's jealous and resentful of her best friend, Holly, who is the school's resident star. And Vivica determines that Clara wants to steal the attention that Holly is getting. So, for those that have been keeping track, we never got to learn what Scarlet or Leona's special powers were. In this book, we do. Scarlet can manipulate gravity, and Leona has super hearing. Unfortunately, Vivica is empowered by the negative energy that Rancora gifted her with, and she stonewalls the three of them at every turn. Plus, as you might remember, Scarlet is obsessed with Earth and wants to live there, so she's distracted both by that and also a very small, another brief romantic subplot with Holly's brother, Maxwell. Since they're not making any progress, Lady Stella realizes that Vivica must have Rancora's pendant, so she sends Libby and Vega down to Earth so that they can all work together to get the pendant away from Vivica. They try to take it by force, but are unsuccessful. So with all five of them together, they come up with the idea to write and perform a song that speaks to Clara and reflects her feelings of being overshadowed, in the hopes that this will maybe inspire her to change her wish to something more positive. On the night of the show, Vivica convinces Clara to lock Holly in a closet so she can't perform her number. So when Holly doesn't show, the Star Darlings go ahead with their performance. It touches Clara right in her heart, just as planned, and she runs to rescue Holly and reconcile with her. It also touches Vivica's heart, who feels herself abandoning all this pent-up jealousy and resentment. Back on Starland, Lady Estella announces that she's chosen not to expel Vivica, and says that she deserves a second chance, since she was under the influence of negative energy. So instead, she places her on probation. At first, it seems like perhaps Vivica is willing to turn over a new leaf, but while watching another performance by the Star Darlings, she feels all her old feelings return and leaves bitter, angry, and jealous, just like she was before. Which is kind of a downer way to end the franchise. The very end of the book does imply that Vivica would have a bigger role to play later on, but all subsequent book releases were canceled. There are some webisodes I didn't talk about, the Star Darlings shorts, all of which are just about a minute long. This is because they do not add anything to the plot. They're just clips of, like, Tessa cooks a meal, Piper meditates. They do give the secondary cast some extra screen time, except the secondary cast isn't voiced, so they're mostly just, like, really weird to watch. There was also a Star Darlings app that featured some short stories told in a sort of simple visual novel style format. I don't know if I would necessarily consider these like canon, quote unquote, but fortunately, even though the app is down, they're not lost, and they're pretty easy to find and read through if you want to. Now, let's talk the dolls. Chapter 5, The Dolls. The first batch of fashion dolls came out in November of 2015, just a couple of months after the first books were published. They were produced by Jakks Pacific, and I think they are pretty neat. I actually really like the dolls. I think the art style translated really nicely to their faces. They have these really adorable inset eyes. They also have this very subtle like shimmer in their skin. I don't know if it shows up well on camera, but it looks really cool in person. And the clothing quality is pretty nice too. A lot of the dolls have several layers. Like Libby here, she actually has a petticoat under her skirt. You could definitely say that these are more character focused than fashion focused. Like, you're buying these for the characters, not to swap around their outfit pieces and to mix and match. But I think they did a good job of giving every character a lot of personality in their outfits. They all have their own individual style. And even if you wouldn't swap their clothes, I think the monochromatic color schemes are just kind of satisfying to look at. There also was some body diversity. Not a lot. They definitely could have done more on that front. But Libby is actually on a slightly taller body than Vega is, and Vega has slightly wider hips than Libby does. I think Libby's body is the more standard one, while the only other character to use Vega's body was Scarlet. I think they had a really nice thing going at the start, because for one, a Zodiac-themed doll line is kind of a clever business model. You have lots of characters to choose from, and a lot of kids are going to be able to immediately identify which character is theirs, which one they have this personal connection to. Like, I am not immune to advertising. I love Vega because she's a Virgo, like me. The problem is that because the character focus was so unbalanced, obviously certain characters got preferential treatment. The first wave of dolls was called Star Glow, and it featured the main lineup: Sage, Libby, Leona, Vega, and Scarlet. They all came with a stand that could light up, as well as a necklace. I own Libby from this edition. Oh, also you probably noticed that Scarlet's doll has much longer hair than she should. She's always depicted with a pixie cut, but toy executives love to meddle and things like that. I actually remember that this first wave was advertised as a sort of limited edition thing. They said they would only be available for a little while before being replaced by a more standard release, which is exactly what happened. The next release was almost identical, but the stands and the necklace weren't there. Instead, the dolls came with a ring that resembled their power crystals. The Vega that I have is actually from this release. There was also a line of budget dolls, which featured the girls in their human disguises, which I think was actually a pretty clever way of utilizing the deluxe doll budget doll model. This line, Wish World, had dolls for Sage, Scarlet, Cassie, and Piper. So Cassie and Piper here actually got Wish World dolls before they got the deluxe dolls. There was another release of the first 5 dolls, this time with instruments, also a stage play set that came with an exclusive Sage doll, another release that came with their respective books, but this one only featured Sage, Libby, and Scarlet. And the very last line to be released was Supernova Star Friends. This line only had Cassie and Sage. Cassie in her Starland outfit with her pet Glowfur, and Sage in a new outfit with her robot friend, Moj4. Apparently, this line only came out in the United Kingdom, so they are considered pretty rare and difficult to come by. There were also dolls planned for Leona and Libby in their Wish World disguises, but these were canceled before they ever came out. So once the line was discontinued, that left Astra, Tessa, Clover, Adora, and Gemma without a doll. So as good as the dolls actually were, I think it's really unfortunate that they never took advantage of their format, which, to be honest, was a recurring issue with Star Darlings, and why I think it didn't pan out the way it could have. Chapter 6. In conclusion, here's how the Star Darlings can still win. Alternatively, me pretending that I have any sort of business experience and explaining what I would have done differently, because I just know better. In summary, books, pretty good. Webisodes, pretty bad. Dolls, pretty good, but it didn't do enough to actually promote the franchise. Do I think we'll ever see the Star Darlings again? No, absolutely not. As I said, Disney is attempting to kind of scrub this series off the face of the earth, so they clearly want nothing to do with it. But I do wish the series had been given a real chance. I mean, it got 14 books. I guess that's considered a pretty good chance, to be completely fair. But also, I don't know. To be honest, I fully blame the webisodes for why this series failed. And maybe the books would have sold poorly with or without them, but I think having a series of bad webisodes is worse than having no webisodes, because even if the books are the primary focus of the franchise, the webisodes are almost guaranteed to be someone's first impression. They're free, they're online, they're easily accessible, and that's how the vast majority of people are going to get involved with the series. And if you only watch the webisodes, yeah, you might leave with a bad impression. They're awkward, they're weirdly mean-spirited, they don't bother to adapt the actual plot of the books, and the characters are reduced to being not very likable and always bickering or insulting each other. They also don't really have any sort of morals or lessons to speak of, and don't even really focus on the concept of wishes, which is supposed to be like a core value, like just completely in opposition with the books. I know the books also featured times where the girls disagreed with one another or got into arguments. There was that whole evil flower subplot, which I maintain was the worst part of the book series, but in the books, these disagreements felt natural. Like, what happens when you mix 12 very strong personalities? Not everyone is always going to see eye to eye. The girls were still able to grow and learn from one another, even if they didn't always get along. I never got the same vibes from the webisodes. I just don't think they were well written, in my opinion. So I think if I could go back in time and get control of Disney, I would make them better. Easier said than done, sure, but I honestly think Star Darlings deserved like a full-length animated series. You already have 12 books worth of material to adapt, and again, they're pretty good books. They're imaginative, they're uplifting, they really take the time to make all 12 girls individual characters. Yes, that's a really large cast, but the format of the books makes it easy to focus on one character at a time. A full animated series could probably do the same thing. I think it's pretty obvious that for all the talk about wanting to appeal to tween girls and uplift them with positive messages and give them role models, Disney didn't actually want to invest more time in this series than it absolutely had to. Because the dolls, too, just did not take advantage of what was already a really good setup. You have 12 excellent, diverse character designs sitting right in front of you, and you just choose to ignore most of them. Which was a mistake, like a pretty big mistake. I know it's a big ask to release 12 dolls all at the same time, but you didn't have to do them all at the same time. I just imagine that if you were, an Aquarius or an Aries trying to keep up with these dolls, you'd just end up feeling kind of disappointed and alienated because they clearly didn't have any plans to make dolls for your sign, right? At the end of the day, though, it comes down to sales, and Star Darlings just did not sell very well. At least I assume they didn't. And that's something out of most people's control. You can do everything right, but if it just doesn't resonate with audiences, then it just doesn't, and there's not really any room for more speculation on that part. Another reason I think Star Darlings didn't do too well is because the state of middle grade fiction has been in a precarious spot for a long time. This was 10 years ago, obviously, but even then it was a common sentiment that children just didn't read books as much as they used to. And that is a whole sociological discussion on its own, but it's an important factor. I'm not here to shake my fist at the younger generations or anything. I was one of those kids who grew up reading books constantly. I know they still exist. But the fact remains that a book series is going to be a hard sell for a lot of households, especially if you want to create a whole franchise around it. You need something to supplement this, which could have happened if the books, the dolls, and the webisodes had a better balance to them. The perfect scenario is like this. You're, 11 years old. You go on YouTube to watch the Monster High webisodes, but in that little recommended sidebar, you see, what's this? Star Darlings? Well, that looks colorful and fun and full of positive, fashionable female role models. The webisodes introduce all these characters, endear you to them. You beg your mom to buy you a doll of your favorite character so you can have her with you when the full-length animated series starts airing. You love the episodes, the characters, you want to learn more, see more of the story, so your mom buys you the books. Everyone wins. But in reality, the webisodes do a pretty bad job of introducing the story. It doesn't make the characters very endearing, so Why would you care when you see their dolls in Target? What if you're a proud Capricorn and you see that there's no doll that represents you and your favorite character is non-existent in the webisodes? Why would you be curious about seeing her book in the school library? Rather than each facet promoting the other two facets, it was like they were all actively working against one another. And that is why I think Star Darlings did not take off, even though it definitely did deserve better. So, Star Darlings came and went, and unfortunately did not leave a huge impression on either the doll industry or the publishing industry. Which is kind of sad, because I do genuinely think the books are very cute, and I think the story it wanted to tell and the messages it wanted to impart deserved better. The series had a lot of love and a lot of imagination put into it, so I'm happy to share it. I hope this encourages someone to go out and read the books and get the full story, to go on eBay and buy some of the dolls, or even to just look and reminisce about a pretty strange, pretty forgotten, but a very charming and earnest hidden gem out there. Thank you so much for watching. I'm not even going to bother with an outro because I want to get out of this chair. Goodbye.